The Facebook invitation arrived at 2:17 a.m. Sarah's wedding. Come celebrate with us at the Grand Bellecourt. Below it, my cousin Jessica's comment already had 14 likes. Wow, fancy venue. How did she afford this place? I stared at the glowing screen, knowing exactly how Sarah had afforded it. I should know. I'd been the anonymous owner for 4 years, ever since I quietly purchased the struggling venue through my investment company Meridian Estates. My family had always measured worth in dollar signs and social status. While my cousins flaunted their retail jobs as markers of success, I had been quietly building an empire of commercial properties and event spaces across 3 states. They thought I was just another property management worker, barely scraping by. Saturday arrived with perfect wedding weather. I parked my modest Honda Civic next to the Bentleys and BMWs and took my seat at table 12 with Sarah's coworkers. The important family, of course, held court at table 1. The ceremony was beautiful. Sarah glowed in her gown, genuinely happy with her choice of venue. The gardens were in full bloom, the ballroom gleamed with the renovations I'd personally approved and funded. But as champagne loosened tongues, familiar patterns emerged. Can you believe Sarah pulled this off? Jessica whispered loudly to her sister, Amanda. The Grand Bellecourt costs 30 grand just for rental. Maybe she put it on credit cards, Amanda suggested. You know how desperate she's been to compete with us since we got our promotions. I continued eating, pretending not to hear. At table 1 sat the self-declared successful family. Jessica with her bank job, Amanda with her department store management position, Uncle Robert with his small construction business. Where's poor Emma sitting? Jessica's voice carried across the room. Oh look, table 12 with the coworkers. At least Sarah didn't put her with important family. During cocktail hour, Jessica explained to anyone who would listen that some of us are just more successful than others in this family. Amanda made sure to mention her promotion, while Uncle Robert cornered the groom about real estate opportunities despite owning just 1 rental property. I smiled when spoken to, but mostly I focused on Sarah's joy. This was her day. My family's endless pecking order seemed smaller in the face of genuine happiness. Then came the inevitable. I don't understand how Sarah afforded this place, Jessica said, no longer whispering. She gestured toward the chandeliers and marble floors. The flowers alone must have cost 10 grand. Maybe her husband's family paid, Amanda suggested. Because we all know Sarah's side of the family. She flicked her hand vaguely toward my table. Well, some of us have been more successful than others, Uncle Robert added. Jessica leaned in, smug. I'm a loan officer at First National. I see people's finances every day. Most people our age couldn't even qualify for the credit line this wedding requires. Unless she borrowed from family. Amanda dropped her voice. From the successful ones, she said, glancing around her own table. Jessica laughed. I hope she didn't ask Emma. Can you imagine? Hey Emma, lend me 30,000? She can barely afford rent. The table erupted in laughter. Guests nearby shifted uncomfortably, Sarah's in-laws exchanging uneasy glances. My phone buzzed. Property manager, Grand Bellecourt. Event going smoothly. Renovations exceeding expectations. I thought about the $340,000 in improvements I'd signed off on. New marble floors, restored moldings, state-of-the-art lighting. Amanda nudged Jessica. Look, Emma's checking her phone. Probably texting her landlord about next month's rent. More laughter. By then even the staff had noticed. Maria, the event coordinator I'd worked with for years, found me in the hallway. Ms. Williams, I didn't expect to see you here tonight. Everything meeting your standards. Perfect, Maria. The staff has been exceptional. She lowered her voice. We've been getting interesting feedback from Table 1. They've been asking the servers about tonight's costs. One of them even said something about working people knowing their place. It's making the team uncomfortable. That was the line. My family could play their superiority games with me, but dragging my staff into it was unacceptable. Thank you, Maria. I'll handle it. By the time I returned, Sarah and her husband were lost in their first dance beneath the chandeliers I'd chosen myself. They looked radiant, untouched by the undercurrent of tension. Meanwhile, at Table 1, Jessica had gathered an audience, holding court as if she were lecturing a class. The thing about venues like this, she said, gesturing around, is they're designed for a certain clientele. Doctors, bankers, real professionals, not people in support roles. Mrs. Patterson, Sarah's old neighbor, frowned. Are you suggesting some guests don't belong here? Jessica smirked. I'm just saying, some people live beyond their means. This event is either debt-financed or someone else is footing the bill. It's certainly not from our side of the family. I stepped forward. Excuse me, I said softly. Jessica turned. Oh, Emma. We were just saying what a beautiful venue Sarah chose. You must be impressed, being somewhere this elegant. I am, I replied evenly. The Grand Bellecourt has exceeded my expectations tonight. Amanda chuckled. Most of us could never afford something like this. But it's fun to see how the other half lives, right, Emma? Educational, I agreed, my tone cool. Then I tilted my head toward Jessica. I overheard you discussing the venue's standards and clientele. You seem very knowledgeable about the Grand Bellecourt's business practices. Jessica sat taller, preening. Of course. I work in banking. I understand luxury markets. Places like this are highly selective. Selective how? I asked. They want clients who can pay without question. People with real success, not those stretching their finances. I smiled. So, in your opinion, what kind of person gets to host events here? Jessica didn't hesitate. Successful people. Business owners. Professionals. People with established wealth, not those depending on others. I let the silence stretch, their own words hanging in the air. Interesting, I said at last, my voice low but carrying just enough to be heard. Because I happen to know the owner. And she doesn't seem to share your opinion. It's not judging people. It's understanding financial reality versus financial fantasy. I nodded. So, if someone were hosting here tonight, you could assess whether they truly belong? Jessica smirked, warming to her own authority. People in banking develop an eye for these things. Places like the Grand Bellecourt need to protect their brand. No, they can't just rent to anyone with a credit card. Just then, Maria appeared at my shoulder with her usual intuitive timing. Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Jessica looked up expectantly, probably assuming Maria was there to refill water glasses. Ms. Williams, Maria said, addressing me directly. The photographer is requesting to discuss tomorrow's corporate event setup. Should I tell her you'll meet Monday? The entire table fell silent as my family processed what they'd just heard. Tomorrow is fine, Maria, I replied. The Meridian Group's quarterly celebration is smaller, so standard setup works perfectly. Of course. And should I confirm the menu changes for next weekend's anniversary party? The Hendersons wanted the premium wine selection. Approved. Make sure they get the 2015 vintage. Maria nodded professionally and began to step away, but I stopped her. One more thing, Maria. The guests at this table have been asking staff about tonight's pricing and making comments about venue policies. Could you clarify our position on guest inquiries about private event costs? Maria's eyes flicked toward my cousins before she answered smoothly. The Grand Bellecourt's policy is that all financial arrangements are confidential between venue and event hosts. Our staff never discuss pricing with guests, and we do not tolerate harassment of team members. Perfect. And our policy on determining which clients are appropriate for our venue. Maria didn't hesitate. The Grand Bellecourt welcomes all clients who treat our facilities and staff with respect, regardless of background or perceived financial status. We believe celebration should be accessible to anyone who values our services. Thank you, Maria. As she left, I turned back to table 1. Jessica's face had gone white. Amanda stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. Uncle Robert's mouth hung open. You, Jessica stammered. I own the Grand Bellecourt, I said simply. Have for 4 years. Tonight's event is being hosted at cost, as my wedding gift to Sarah. The silence stretched across multiple tables. Conversations halted. Guests leaned in. You can't, Amanda whispered. I purchased the venue in 2019 when the previous owners faced bankruptcy. I've invested over $2 million in renovations. Maria's team reports to me directly. Uncle Robert found his voice. But, you work in property management. I own a property management company. Meridian Estates. We manage 47 commercial properties across 3 states, including 12 wedding venues. Jessica shook her head. That's impossible. You drive a Honda. You live in a small apartment. I met her eyes calmly. I drive a Honda because it's reliable and I don't need to prove anything through a car. I live modestly because I travel often and prefer investing in properties rather than personal luxuries. I work very hard managing an 8-figure portfolio. The revelations rippled across the reception. Guests whispered. Some looked fascinated. Others uncomfortable at my family's public humiliation. Why didn't you tell us? Jessica asked in a low voice. Tell you what? That I was successful. Would it have changed how you treated me? Amanda protested weakly. We didn't treat you badly. Tonight alone, I countered, you told strangers I don't belong at high-end venues, that I can barely afford rent, that I don't understand real money, that I represent the demographic that doesn't fit. Uncle Robert tried to recover. We didn't mean anything personal. You established a hierarchy, I said firmly, positioning yourselves as arbiters of success and me as the cautionary tale of financial failure. And you did it at Sarah's wedding in front of her guests, while enjoying hospitality I provided. I looked around the table. Jessica, you're a loan officer at a regional bank. Amanda, you manage a retail store. Uncle Robert, you own a small construction business. These are respectable careers. I've never said otherwise. But tonight, you positioned yourselves as experts on luxury venues based solely on those titles. Jessica tried to speak, but I cut her off. More importantly, you made my staff uncomfortable. You interrogated them about costs and dismissed them as working people who should know their place. That ends now. Maria reappeared with 2 staff members at her side. Miss Williams, is everything all right? Everything's fine, Maria. I was just clarifying misconceptions about the Grand Bellecourt's policies and ownership. I turned back to my family. You're welcome to stay and celebrate Sarah's wedding. But commentary about who belongs at premium venues stops immediately. Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. Emma, we didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You assumed that because I don't flaunt wealth I must be struggling. You built a narrative without ever being curious about reality. Amanda stared at her hands. You thought success looks like luxury cars, designer clothes, and loud proclamations. You thought anyone who doesn't perform wealth must not have it. Jessica's eyes glistened. What happens now? Now, I said evenly, you decide whether you're here to celebrate Sarah's marriage or to perform social superiority. If it's the latter, you're welcome to leave. If it's the former, we can focus on why we're actually gathered. I glanced around the table one last time. The Grand Bellecourt is honored to host Sarah and Michael's celebration. Every guest is welcome, regardless of career, income, or family dynamics. That includes all of you. I turned to go, then added, one more thing. Sarah doesn't know tonight's event is my wedding gift. She believes she and Michael paid full price. I'd prefer to keep it that way. Her happiness isn't about my contribution. It's about the love she's celebrating. The rest of the evening passed quietly. My family stayed, subdued, their usual commentary gone. During the bouquet toss, Sarah grabbed my arm, beaming. Emma, I'm so glad you came. This venue, it's like a fairy tale, isn't it? It really is, I said, smiling at her glow. You look beautiful, Sarah. As the night wound down, I helped Maria coordinate cleanup, something I'd done countless times, though never in a cocktail dress. I've worked with many venue owners, Maria said, watching me. I've never seen one handle a situation like that with such grace. My family isn't malicious, I replied quietly. They've just spent years building a story that made them comfortable with their choices. Tonight that story was challenged. Outside, Jessica and Amanda stood by their cars, talking intensely with their husbands. Uncle Robert loaded centerpieces into his truck. People adapt to new information differently, I continued. Some learn and grow. Others find new ways to protect the same old story. Later, driving home in my reliable Honda, I reflected. My hidden success, my modest appearance, my quiet competence had served me well. Competitors underestimated me. Clients focused on results instead of ego. But it had also enabled my family's hierarchies. By never correcting their assumptions, I'd let them build a narrative that cast me as the failure, and themselves as the standard. Tomorrow I'd oversee 3 corporate events and review quarterly reports. Sarah and Michael would begin their honeymoon, never knowing their dream venue had been my gift. And my family, Jessica, Amanda, and Uncle Robert, would start rewriting their narrative to account for the truth. The cousin they dismissed as unsuccessful was, in fact, the most financially successful person at the wedding. Some stories are written slowly, shaped over years of small interactions. Others change in a single conversation. Tonight had been the latter. Tomorrow would reveal which kind of family I really had.